Hi there. So I wanted to make a video today of Guy Verhofstadt, who is the Brexit negotiator for the European Union. I think this guy is just a lunatic. So he's a Europhile cheerleader, and I just want to give a little bit of insight into him today. So he was the Prime Minister of Belgium between 1999 and 2008. He is the leader of the Group of Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, that's abbreviated to ALDE. In 2014, he became the President of the European Commission, and since September 2016, he's now the Chief Brexit negotiator. This guy, if you see him, if you hear him talking, he is an absolute Europhile, so he is an absolute cheerleader for the European Commission, so he is. Just to give you a bit of insight into his mentality, I'm going to play you a clip here from BBC's Newsnight.
You cannot create a status for countries outside the European Union where it's even more favourable than for the countries who are member of the European Union. No.
So, as you heard in that there clip, he doesn't want countries outside the European Union, like the UK, to have a more favourable position than countries inside the European Union. And the reason he doesn't want that, obviously, is because that would make the EU irrelevant. If countries could be just as good or better outside the European Union than inside, that would make the European Union useless. It's just a formality. It's a waste of time to go into. And that's not what he wants. He doesn't want what's best for a country. He wants what's best for the powers of the European Union. And the powers of the European Union want the countries to join and to be locked into their system. And I think when you're thinking of negotiations, this will translate to him trying to punish Britain as much as possible, to make an example out of Britain for leaving. And you know, he's very worried about things like Marine Le Pen and the German AfD and Geert Wilders and basically the rise in populism and nationalism going through Europe at the minute. He is worried about that, and so is the whole European Union, really. And that's why they'll probably want to try and make an example out of Brexit. And there's something creepy about that. You know, I get an image of like an abusive spouse or something who threatens that if you leave them, they're going to make your life a living hell afterwards. There's something really creepy and just wrong about that. And obviously, in this next clip here, I'm going to show that he really tries to demonize the idea of national sovereignty, and that countries who want their own independence are bad and wrong, and there's something evil about it. And he tries to fluff up the European Union by using these buzzwords like unity and togetherness and so on and so forth. So I'll play this clip, and you'll see where I'm coming from with that.
For the European Union, the reason why people are falling into the trap of nationalism, populism, is because there are no political leaders in Europe for the moment showing the way forward, saying, look, if we want to really solve the problem of the migration crisis, the refugee flow, the economic fallout of the financial crisis, the geopolitical weakness of Europe, we need a more united Europe and not a divided Europe.
So he's right about one thing. The European Union leaders don't seem to have a vision for the future of the European Union, and I would argue that's probably because they can't think of a good one. But you hear him talking there, you know, people are falling into the trap of nationalism and populism, just demonising national sovereignty and independence of nations and so on and so forth, and trying to fluff up and make the European Union sound much better than it is. Oh, but we can fix all these problems if we just unite together. It's I just hate this guy and the way he talks and he speaks. But of course, that's just him advocating for more power of the European Union so that they can much easier dictate the situation. That would also explain why he's against unanimity. That is, the consent of the countries before they make laws, before they pass legislation.
The problem is that it is still a confederation, a loose confederation of nation states based on the unanimity rule. And you know, and I know, that an international organization based on the unanimity rule, where 28 heads of state and government have to agree, it acts always too little too late. And that is the problem of the union today. And so
just what a power-hungry dictator would say. We need less consent. We need to be able to act without everyone having to agree to something. I hate you. I hate you so much. And of course, when they're talking about the Theresa May's speech, he starts talking about, you can't cherry pick bits and pieces that you do and you don't want, and you need to pay for the bits that you don't really want, because otherwise, again, this would make the European Union relevant. It would show that you can be in a favourable position without actually having to commit yourself to the European Union, and that's what they don't want.
What she mainly said was we go out of the European Union, out of the single market, out of the customs union, out of the European Court of Justice, and then, maybe we could have this European program that interests us, or that will not work naturally, because you cannot pick and choose.
Why not? Because it is in your interest to let us cooperate with you. Why wouldn't you?
No, my idea was a totally different one. It was against Brexit. I thought that even the best solution should be that Britain is still part of the single market. Nationalism. How should nationalism solve the problems that we are facing today in Europe? Climate change, should it be solved by nationalism? No, or, for example, the migration flow by nationalism? Is that the way?
This is a very basic.
In response to that point, I think that nationalism will help curb the migration flow. Giving countries sovereignty over their own borders would actually help curb immigration, so it would. Take, for example, Australia, which was going through a similar problem as us, where there was a bunch of migrants coming by boat, and there was many of them dying at sea, and Australia basically clamped down and said, we're not going to take any more migrants who come by boats. And in fact, they actually implemented a policy where they would return the boats by towing them, so they would. And this has actually worked incredibly well, so it has. Since enacting this in about 2013 there, only 16 boats have come. One has successfully landed on Australia, and there's been no death since. Now, of course, people on the left are complaining about the ethics of this, and you shouldn't focus on trying to return the migrants. You should, be looking into why they're trying to escape, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, this has worked. This has curbed the migration, and it just shows that the EU's policy of open borders and letting everyone in just hasn't worked. So it hasn't. And again, if you look back at Libya, right, and the situation that happened there, Gaddafi was saying to the EU, listen, you need to give me more money to sort out this problem. We're the roadblock from migrants to the EU in Africa, and if you don't help fund this, they're just going to pour in. And we're now seeing the fruits of that, so we are. They basically tried to say he was extorting them because he asked for about £4 billion to sort this, and they ignored him, of course, and now we have the African migrant crisis, which is absolute insanity. But the most worrying thing I found about Verhofstadt is his open advocacy for a European Union army.
We have to reform this whole business. A more effective union, a more democratic union, with a real European government, with a real European defense capacity.
European army?
A European army, yeah. What's wrong on this? Here in Europe, we don't act. We don't take the decision because you need unanimity before you can do something. And that doesn't work in the world of today.
And again there, he seems to have a problem with the idea of unanimity, the idea of everyone consenting to something before going along with it. And that seems particularly worrying when we talk about the idea of an EU army, because think about it for a second. People could potentially die if this is enacted. This is going to be a massive decision, so it is. And the worrying thing about that is, who really wants to put their life on the line for the EU? I mean, where did that sort of patriotism come from? That kind of worries me more than anything. I'm kind of surprised at where that came from. What exactly has the EU done that's made people so patriotic towards it in that sense? The EU leaders during the UK referendum actually decided to postpone the piece of legislation going through the EU Parliament because they were worried that the mention of an EU army would help bolster the Leave campaign. So, that's something else to bear in mind. They know that people don't like this idea. And of course then you have to think of Russia as well, because no doubt the EU army is being made for the purposes of some sort of military confrontation with Russia. And, you know, I just find it so weird, you know. I thought, if the EU is so worried about Russia, why did it take Trump to come in and threaten him with withdrawing funding, or even withdrawing altogether, before they decided, oh yeah, we have to pay our fair share into this, don't we? I find that kind of weird. So I just thought I'd let you know about this guy. I personally don't like him, and I don't know what kind of person he's going to be when it comes to the UK negotiations, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what becomes of it. Thanks for watching.